Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you passionate about piano and keyboard education? Then mark your calendars for an event that's set to elevate your teaching skills to new heights. The National Conference for Keyboard Pedagogy is back, and it's bigger and better than ever. Join us for our online conference on June 7 and 8, 2025, and our in-person conference, July 23 to 26, 2025, in Lombard, Illinois, for an unforgettable gathering of educators, performers, and industry experts. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this conference offers something for everyone. Dive into workshops led by renowned instructors, discover cutting-edge teaching techniques, and connect with like-minded individuals who share your love for music education. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to learn, grow, and be inspired. For more information, visit nckp2025.com today.
Hello, I'm Andrea McAllister, Director of Digital Programming for the Francis Clark Center, and I'm so pleased to be joined by Jessica Johnson. Jessica Johnson serves on the piano faculty at the University of Wisconsin-Madison as Professor of Piano and Piano Pedagogy. She is an advocate for alternatively sized piano keyboards and frequently commissions and programs contemporary solo and chamber works. Current research explores cross-modal multisensory engagement in the creative process and the impact of contemplative practices on making music joyfully. A devoted teacher, Johnson's students have secured teaching positions in North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. She holds a Doctor of Musical Arts and a Master of Music from the University of Michigan and a Bachelor of Music from East Carolina University. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Andrea.
Your impact on the profession is unquantifiable in many ways. We can look at all the students who are out in the world doing work because of your influence, but there's so much work that has begun with you that is continuing because of you that you might not even see the influence of because it's so far reaching. And it's such an honor to be here with you.
And I feel the same way about you too, because I see how we're all working in community for common values in the field to make a bigger impact and to connect particularly young professionals to make sure that they have ways in on behalf of our former students and grad students and the larger community. So that means a lot to me.
Absolutely. And we are building a community and we are all working in this mission to make the world a better place through music. So I want to actually go back, though, and talk about young Jessica Johnson.
Yeah.
How did you get started from the very earliest of ages? How did music find you and influence you as a child and make you the person you are today?
Yeah, I love thinking about this because I have so much gratitude, from early teachers but most of all, I want to share that I grew up in a rural, I can't say that word, rural community in North Carolina where I didn't have a lot of access to things that you find in conservatory style training. So it wasn't in college that I really heard great artists or had great instruments to practice on. So that was a challenge, but also a strength later on. The thing that I have this vivid memory, I'm the poster child for community outreach, actually, because in second grade, we went to hear the North Carolina Symphony, our elementary class. We learned our little Ode to Joy on recorder in our music class. And, we all gathered. There were probably 1,000 elementary kids from around the state. And the symphony played a youth concert. And of course, I had never heard a live orchestra at that point, and there was before that and after that. And it really struck me like lightning, something that just was so memorable and powerful that I wanted more of that. And I remember they played for us, and then we were playing for them. And I remember just being so wholehearted about playing Ode to Joy for them. And I had caught the bug. And I went home and I told my mother, I want to play the cello, because
Oh.
somehow I was attracted to that. And bless her heart, which we say in the South, she tried to find a cello instructor. We didn't have an orchestra in our school programs, and piano was the thing that was available. And so that's how I sort of got started at 8 years old with that. And I also remember crying for a piano, crying for lessons. And my sister had started piano. She was 9 years older, and she started piano and didn't like it. So I had to really sell it. But
I
one of
will stick with this, I
yes,
promise.
exactly.
Yes.
And one of the things I'm most grateful for, my mother, we were not well-to-do, and after about 6 months of study, she recognized how important it was to me and ended up buying a beautiful new upright piano for me when it was a real, she had to do more sewing or odd jobs to kind of make it happen. And it was her value that she placed value on education and finding the thing that was lighting our eyes up and finding a way to make it happen. And so through that, I always felt that support and love, and it just was always that for me from then on. It was a dear friend, and I really can't imagine getting through middle school and high school without the piano, with a cat
Yes.
nearby as well. I also have a
Oh,
cat
of
thing.
course.
Yes.
Right. So the piano and the cat.
Piano and the
What
cat.
a gift
Yeah.
that your mother was able to give you. And I know we are both parents, and
Yes.
so we see how important whatever lights up our own children, and we will do anything we can to nurture that. So
That's right.
that's such
Even
a
if it's
beautiful.
outside our comfort zone, right? It's like, I don't know what that is.
Did she had she engaged with music before, or
No.
she just saw it was so important to you?
Right. And for each of my
Mhm.
siblings, finding that thing as well.
Mhm.
But that value of education, even though she at the time had only had like a ninth grade education, my father had a sixth grade education. We were all first generation college students, but it was never questioned that we would go to college. And also, I have to compliment the North Carolina college system, which at that time, tuition was affordable. So that created access for people of my generation. And a lot of my neighborhood kids also were first gen. It was a real time of honoring those things. Very powerful.
That is very powerful. And like you said, it's about access.
Yeah.
And you think, well, what if you had never gone to that orchestra performance?
Right.
And I love how you said there was a before and then there was an after. And it was as if before was in black and white, and then the after was just filled with color and possibility and excitement.
Right.
That must have just changed you and affected you in such a profound way. You mentioned that it was really your companion through middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
How so? Because I think a lot of music students have similar stories where I don't necessarily feel like I fit in these crowds, in these cliques, or with these groups of peoples, but I have music.
Right. Yeah, for me, I was always an anxious kid, perfectionistic. And it's a hard time for everybody, right? Those formative times. And this is even without a pandemic. And I just remember coming home from school being anxious about something and going straight to the piano, playing for a little bit, and then I could engage with my family and friends. So, in that sense, it was mine. I always felt like it was coming from inside out. No one was pressuring me to practice piano. It was something inherent. And that is a gift because I've never questioned that aspect of my professional musicianship in the sense that I chose it. It was the right path for me, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
such gratitude, and it's also why I'm so passionate about access and community engagement, having come from a place where those things weren't taken for granted and seeing the impact as a professional of community engagement projects that are co-created with a community partnership
Mm-hmm.
and finding a way to have music as a central healing way to build community. And I don't say that because those are, buzzwords, but really, like I have a program at UW Madison called Piano Pioneers that was actually started by one of my former master students, Erin Greer, who did it as her master's project. And thankfully, we've had sustainability since she left, but it was her idea. And since then, we've had partnerships with like the Boys and Girls Club, some of the after school programs. And we go in, and for my graduate students who work with these community partners, it's learning how to build something together. What
Mm-hmm.
would you like to see? What can we bring that would enrich this experience for you?
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes it means they're having to learn to improvise when they haven't really tried it or having to meet them in places that they're not quite comfortable. So it's been a rewarding experience for those people too, like, and to see how you're growing as well as the people you're working with. So it really is mutually beneficial. But that I've always been passionate about that. And I think it's all because of how for so long I didn't have access to a lot of those cultural entities and how desperate I was.
Yes, absolutely. And it just reminds me of Francis Clark saying, you meet the student where they are. But having music come to them and meeting them where they are, like when you were brought to because your school said, this is important to us. This is a value of ours to
Right.
expose our students when you otherwise would not have had that exposure. That's such an important component of this community engagement that it's beautiful that you've been able to build these relationships.
Right. It's very meaningful and it's a core value. So I even
Mhm.
when I'm a little bit too busy and, a lot of things are sort of on top of each other during certain times of the year, because it's in such alignment with what matters to me, I can still find that, you know.
But what I see from all of the work is not, oh, you're working on this piece or you're working on the different size keyboard. I feel that it's all wrapped up in this idea of access. So it all of this work you are doing, it's so rooted in those early days, isn't
It
it?
is, it is, and as you're speaking about those things, because I do feel that they're tied together in those values, and I think about my own journey, and I've witnessed this in my teaching with my students as well. It's an intimidating field. It can be very
Mhm.
challenging, because of our incredible legacy of repertoire and great artists, which I love. We carry a lot of baggage sometimes, and figuring out our place in the world and honoring our own journey and
Mhm.
claiming our own voice is a challenging thing. And I love the directions we're moving now because there are, I always say it's, hang around young people, you stay young because it's a rewarding thing about our job working with both pre-college students and college age students who are figuring these things out. And, I that's such a privilege to be part of that journey and to notice the things, what makes them light up. So for some people, it might be like for myself, very early, I noticed that teaching was something that I could get over myself, is the way I would put it.
Okay.
So the things that I was self-conscious about, like performing, or that I
Mhm.
struggled, that I didn't fit neatly into that box of what I was supposed to be, what I thought.
Mhm.
Teaching, I was really connecting with the other person, and it would get me outside of myself. And there was such joy in that and meaning. And I recognized that early on. So it was always a big part of who I was as a musician. Similarly, the things you mentioned with new music, it was something I didn't have the big baggage on my back. No
Mhm.
one ever played it before, right?
That is
It's
very
a
true.
puzzle. I have to use my imagination and
Mhm.
figure this out, and often in collaboration with a living composer. And that freed me up. And I found a lot of joy and freedom in that kind of music, as well as collaborative music making was also something that right away I felt really good. I have a duo with my husband who's a percussionist, and I always
Mm.
say, of course, there's the trust and the vulnerability. And while he can't save me during a performance, I love having a big bass drum in front of the piano that I can kind of hide behind. And people say, I couldn't see you. I'm like, could you hear me? We're good.
Mhm.
So that's part of my personality. Solo performance is harder. It requires more time for me psychologically. And, as I look at my own journey, I've had to claim, I always say it's sort of turning things that were once weaknesses into superpowers. And I would say things like the alternatively sized keyboard. I
Mhm.
went through all of my graduate study and for a long time playing on the conventional piano and finding really ergonomic ways and redistributions and doing the best I could, playing even some big repertoire that now I'm like, how did I do that?
Exactly.
Besides tenacity and I don't
Many,
know.
many
Yeah.
hours in the
Right,
practice room.
exactly. So but even in my 20s, I don't think I would have been as open to the alternatively sized keyboard. It was claiming that this is gonna allow me to reach optimal performance.
Mhm.
This is what I need.
Did you feel that looking back at your 20s saying, "I don't think I would have embraced this at this time." Did you
I
see that
wonder.
as it almost admitting the weakness that
Exactly.
I can't do this, so
That's
I
right.
have to do this and it's lesser than?
That's right. The same was true with pedagogy. I remember telling one less than enlightened professor that I was really interested in teaching, that this was really a calling. The response was, "You're way too talented to go into pedagogy." Right. And
Mm.
I know the world has changed now, and I'm really happy for that. But at the time, there was that box, and I'm trying to go outside of it and figure out what fits me and my
Mhm.
strengths and my values. And it was discouraged. It was considered less than, as you said.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I do know and hope that
Yeah.
that is changing for
Yes.
every person.
Yes.
It's I see so much growth in our field, and you said working with young people keeps you young, but they have so much enthusiasm
Exactly.
around teaching and sharing, and communicating,
Right.
and collaborating in this way. I When you were in second grade and you said there was just this light and there was the before and the after, and it seems the same was true for you with teaching as well, and you came to that realization pretty early on.
Yeah.
That is so, uh, you have such a clear, it seems, focus on what really is your passion and your drive, and you don't there are no apologies for that.
But that's taken a lot of reflection. And, I'm 58 and I'm very privileged. I have this wonderful position and
Mhm.
power and privilege where I can be vulnerable. And I respect very much that my students who teach me remarkable things every week, some of which is humility because of, not having the answer and learning to be vulnerable with them and modeling that. Um, I know that recognizing that and allowing them their process, that they may not be ready So I'm not going to insist that they're jumping to where I am at this stage in my career, because we all have to go
Right.
about it in our own way and
Mhm.
define our own values and figure out what matters. And that's one of my favorite things in mentoring students, is helping them notice, wow, you're getting really excited about this, or your playing just opened up because you were introduced to this composer or this repertoire, or
Mhm.
you curated a program that was especially meaningful for you, which is something I'm encouraging all of my students to do. Maybe
Mhm.
it's your cultural legacy or things that you love, or, what, any number of motivations, but claiming it for yourself as something important to you. And I'm so grateful too. So I would say my students and my own teachers, the mentors along the way who helped see those things for me and validated them, were so incredibly impactful. And, I was lucky in my undergrad to have a pedagogy teacher. I did a double degree in performance and pedagogy as an undergrad, even. And I worked with Carrie Carlin, who worked with Francis Clark. And a lot of those values came through that that I still hold today. And of course, I worked with Joanne Smith at Michigan, who was incredibly clear on those values and music and honoring the student in front of you and meeting
Mhm.
them where they are. So those things really shaped my view of teaching. And then for my own piano teachers, I had so many people who saw me and would allow me to pursue new music and
Mhm.
find my own way. And that, I'm so grateful for that. That's been, yeah, it's powerful. It is powerful.
It is. And I think educators who can do that for their students, like you said, it's a superpower. It's
Yes,
not a weakness,
yes,
it's a superpower. That
yes.
truly is a superpower. And it's giving a gift to another human being that is so precious, to say, I see you
Hmm.
and I see when you have the spark, and helping them realize that that spark is there. You talked about your perfectionist tendencies and
Yes.
how certain things have helped you break out of that.
Mhm.
Do you I don't know if this has changed any generationally
Yeah.
as we get into this age of um, AI and um,
Yes.
where we can manipulate digitally to make perfect. And we
That's
have social
right.
media where there's this glossy veneer to everything we see, where there's this perfection. Do you think that has altered our our students' musical standards, or just personal human standards of what they have to live up to? And how do you then help them
Yeah.
overcome the perfectionism, help them find that thing that really gives them a
It's
spark?
so difficult, and I agree with you. I think, I'm so glad that I didn't grow up with Snapchat. I think that would have been really difficult for me with some of the things I was struggling with, and I do see that in a lot of adolescents and, my own students who are grappling with the attention being, pulled in so many directions. And as you said, the whole holding up, this is what it should be. This is who you're supposed to be. And to convince them and model myself the kinds of vulnerability and struggles. And I'm very open about that with boundaries. So
Mhm.
it's not that I'm asking them to hold my struggle, but this was always difficult for me. And here are the things that I've come to
Mhm.
do. It may not work for you, but I want you to know that it looks shiny on the
Mhm.
outside, but when you go beneath, like our talk about beneath the iceberg with Midori Koga, is that looking deeper, that we all struggle. We all hit struggles and setbacks and even fail. And I try to integrate those things into my teaching so that that is an accepted integral part of growing and creativity, the creative process. So I was thinking of Frances Clark, the whole learn on your own kind of piece that she was always look at what they know and then stretch them and help them build autonomy and agency through trusting themselves. And that is a core thing that I try to do. And I'll carefully scaffold and pick something that I think they're ready for or with them, choose the next step. And then I love to send them off after we brainstorm a little bit. Where are you going to start? Where are you? What are you drawn to in the piece? How do you want to go back about it? And let them kind of flounder a little bit. Then come back. I have my students keep journals or in some way, some of them do it with videos. They find their own way to do it. But some kind of reflexive procedure that we do so that they can find who they are and learn to trust that they have ideas. And then I can facilitate subsequently and say, oh, tell me what you tried. What are you noticing? What do you feel is the next step? And then we can brainstorm more ideas, but inviting them that, yeah, that didn't work, did it? What did you learn from that? No one died, because I think the perfectionism thing, many artists have that because we care so deeply we often over-identify with that is who we are. So learning to be, I am okay, I'm enough, to quote Maya Angelou, I am enough just as I am. If they can hold that and be vulnerable and willing to take bold risk, that's when it can break open and they can really discover who they are. And being along for that ride as a teacher is just one of my favorite things in the world. And likewise, as a student, having those people who were there for me when I was struggling with that. But they felt confident. I would look over and they would be confident I would get there. And there's something about that it's like, okay, maybe I have a distorted view of where I should be right now.
We use this phrase often in our household, check the facts, right? Because a thought is not a fact. And so
That's right.
sounds like that
I
was
love that.
a wonderful way in which your teachers helped you through that. You mentioned this word trust a lot. And I often share with my students that trust is really about having something that is so precious to you that you can share with another person and everything will be fine. You're making yourself vulnerable by taking that thing that is very precious and saying, I trust you with this, versus the opposite of, I cannot share my vulnerabilities with you.
Right.
And you are doing such amazing work with your students, sharing those vulnerabilities and saying, you can trust me. But what I love even more about what you're saying is you are also showing them that they can trust themselves.
That's right.
And with these reflective activities that you are helping them through, because I think unless you are taught how to do that, then that is a missing component of that process of trust.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I know in my own journey as somebody who has generalized anxiety, and that's been something that, those of us with trait anxiety are more likely to have performance anxiety. There's the data is clear and it makes perfect intuitive sense as well. Being afraid to put myself out there. And I think of the things I didn't do because I didn't want to take the risk. But I also think of the things I did do, even though they were really hard because it aligned with my values. And when I went through a medical crisis about 10 years ago, and I started a mindfulness class, and I learned stillness and sitting with my anxiety and holding it rather than resisting, avoiding, it transformed everything in my life, particularly my teaching, my performance. Because then I was able to say, instead of, oh, it's terrible, I can't do this, I would frame the conversation around principles of self-compassion. So this feels bad. I'm not happy. Then with mindful curiosity, what is it exactly? Oh, I don't like the pacing in this transition, or
Mhm.
I need to find a different fingering or a different gesture, a different way to group that so that it makes more sense. And then you could strategize and find a way forward and meet yourself where you are. You're your own teacher, right?
That is true.
And then that transformed my teaching and because of helping them see where they are and what do
Mhm.
I need, rather than the personal judgment, perfectionism. Rather, it is, how can I solve this? What kinds of sounds can I make? And then the joy and the playfulness comes through. And then I remembered the second grader, the thing that I
Mhm.
was so excited about. And then I always say, when I have those delightful moments with a student, I call them moments of joy, cultivating joy, where you catch somebody in the act and you're connecting and something's happening. And I'll often point it out to them. This is a moment of joy for me. I'm really happy to be here right now. And modeling that and waking them up and drawing attention. And they're like, oh, yeah, because we're
Mm.
so busy and the world is pushing us to be busy. So having some stillness where we're just right here. I do things like body scans before the lessons, before my own practice, before my own work, things that help me declare it a sacred space, that we're coming together to connect and share and trust each other. And whether it's alone or with a partner, whether rehearsal, it's a great thing I've learned. And I I'm so grateful that my path went in that direction and
Mhm.
that I was able to explore that, because it's really revolutionized my where I am and how I feel about being a professional musician and teacher.
Yes, I I I so appreciate how you're talking about mindfulness and meeting yourself, but meeting yourself with curiosity
Mhm.
instead of judgment.
Right.
And that is such a difficult thing for humans to do because we are so naturally drawn to judgment first
Yes.
instead of curiosity. And maybe maybe there are just people out there who just naturally do this, and I would love to be one of those people,
Right.
but it's something
But
that
then you
I
wouldn't be who you are,
that's exactly
which
true.
is your superpower.
But I listened to you talking about the mindfulness, and I it reminded me of what you said at the beginning of this conversation is when you would come home from school as a middle schooler and you needed to go to the piano before you could engage with anyone in your house.
Yeah.
Was that your mindfulness practice back then?
Yes, and what I discovered is that musicians and artists who are very often in flow states and deeply engaged in our work, that mindfulness is an extension of that. And I'm like, "Oh, I already know how to do this." So I was afraid because I thought I'm too anxious to sit on a cushion and be still and
Mhm.
wise. But what I learned was, oh, I've been cultivating this all of my life. And so helping my students also connect with that, really important, because slowing things down, being able to be right where you are, pretty transformative,
It is transformative. It's very difficult. And
very difficult.
one of one of the difficulties about growing up and when you're younger and you can just go to the piano and just meditate
Yes.
and be at the piano just with yourself, no judgment. But then we audition
That's right.
and we go through juries and we have
Right.
interviews
Right.
and it's all of this external judgment
Right.
that feeds the internal judgment.
Right.
How do you help yourself and your students? Is it
Yeah.
just a daily practice that
It's hard, it's nonlinear. There's every person has to find their own way, and at different times of your life, it's messy, it's chaotic. As I said before, you have to fail. You have to be willing to go outside your comfort zone. And I think for me, it's rooted in the self-compassion and really working on that. I've even joked that I catch myself now, like, what a great idea I just had. And when I'm teaching, did you catch that? This was $1 million fingering suggestion. Because so often I don't come up with it quickly. So when I do, and my students will giggle. And I know that in my work with Midori Koga, we've known each other for 35 years. We did our graduate work together. We were roommates. We have similar struggles and also very aligned values. So we've kind of been following sort of similar paths professionally and in our teaching. And one of the things I was always grateful for when I was a student and I was trying to be what I was supposed to be
In the box.
right. With Midori, I was real. So I was anxious. I was worried about this performance. I didn't feel like I belonged there in this elite music school. I was, a farm kid from nowhere who said Mozart and got laughed at, and then I tried to work on my Southern accent. I'm so glad that now I don't care about it, right? It's part of who I am, and I'm proud of that. But it took a long time. And I see that for my students, and I love it when they claim what really matters to them, and you see that growth. And, when they're willing to be vulnerable with me as a first step, and then I'm always like, find one person, that's all you need, that you can be real with. That's where you start. Because vulnerability is rooted in connection. So you can't really be vulnerable and you can't tell your story if nobody is there to hear it.
That is very true.
And it's also the community, our very humanity, that music is powerful in that way. It brings people together across cultures and languages and political views. And we all want to sing and dance. We all want to express ourselves in that way. So I believe in it so much that it's helped me be braver in determining next steps. So that, because it's so important to me, I feel like what we're doing is so important to the world because of the nature of it being a universal human need and a way of expressing who we are and finding the center of our humanity through it. And that's pretty good to tap into when you're really busy and you're, it's the middle of the semester and everybody's tired, but, find a way to connect and claim your own values and work to do that. And it usually will you'll come out through the other side. Sometimes you have to go through tunnels and difficult things. In fact, I would say that my most transformative moments, and I've seen this with my students and peers, colleagues, something that looks like a breakdown, something that looks like falling flat on your face, where you have to define why you're there. You have to claim it for yourself. And I would use an example, dealing with cancer and mindfulness and having to say, this is how I'm going to emerge on the other side. There was also a time my father died when I was a senior in college and I was planning grad auditions. I had the repertoire ready to go. And it was in September when it happened, and I just crashed. And I told everybody, I'm quitting. I'm quitting piano. I don't want lessons. I'm not going to grad school. And I went inward, and I always credit Beethoven for this because what called me was 109.
Of course.
And I just started playing it for myself, weeping, grieving, going through that tunnel. And I remember, 8 weeks, a couple months later, going to my teacher and saying, okay, I've got 109 ready. And he's like, okay, what's going on?
Wow.
But it was that kind of the thing that called me for what I needed. And it was so important to me at the time because it was on my terms. It was something that helped me deal with my humanity, grieve, all of the things that we have to do as humans to process the things that we go through. And I've seen that happen with many people, that there's something that calls to them, some way of connecting. It might be a project with a community. I love the innovation that students are coming up with now, like all the unique chamber music groups and music in unusual places and venues
And
and
bringing
community,
music,
right?
right?
I'm here for it. It's great. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and said at the very beginning that you are touching the world in so many ways that you might not even recognize. And I think this idea of music as a saving power when we are at the lowest of the low, or when we're celebrating
Right.
the
Right.
the happiest joys of life, and
Absolutely.
like you said, oh, that was a moment of joy, and being able to do that through music, this is what is going to get us through.
That's right. And I've been reflecting on, students are always at the center for me. I'm like, I never complain about the students. That's the thing that feels really true for me. And I use the word privilege not lightly. But growing up, I really wasn't, I didn't have access to many things, different cultural views, languages. Everybody was kind of the same. And so the privilege of working with people from all over the world, students and colleagues, and getting those different perspectives and celebrating their cultural identity and working on my own cultural humility so that it's
Mhm.
like, I don't know what that's like. Tell me more. And here's what it
Right.
was like for me. And that exchange, which requires vulnerability and trust,
Right.
right? It's all looped into the same thing. Um, is such a rewarding thing, and I joke that I could probably go now anywhere in the world almost and have a family to stay with, at least students or grad students or people I've collaborated with, and I love that, you know? And I always think of the piano, which is a dear friend to me. I think of it as one of my best friends, and all the people I've met through that and how rich that is in our community and how, as you said, we're then able to share that with others. It's privilege.
It is a privilege indeed, and hearing you speak this way about it, just it it's the making music with joy,
That's right.
and sharing that message with the world. So thank you for all the work you do and
And
all the joy
likewise.
you spread in all of the ways that you get through the mess of life and
Right.
say, you know what, it was messy and it didn't fit within that
That's
box that we're supposed to fit in,
right.
but that's okay.
Better than okay.
It's better than okay because
Make
it's
room for who you are
right,
and
because it's
celebrate
very
it.
authentically
Right.
you.
And there's room for all of us. Both and.
Both and.
Both and.
So we end all of our podcasts with the same question because this is the Piano Inspires podcast. So we have touched on this a lot,
Yeah.
but how does piano inspire you?
Yeah, I think I have touched on this because of it being a lifelong friend and music and the powerful connections and believing that a single music educator in any instrument, choir, band, orchestra, piano, doesn't matter, can affect so many lives. And I admire all of us so much for that because it is honoring the person or group in front of us and allowing them to be who they are. And it connects something that we all share as humans, this need to express ourselves, this needs to gather in community. And we can do that through music. And one last anecdote I'll share is I used to hate walking out on stage. And the piano can look quite menacing, the 9-foot Steinway,
Yes, it
the
can on a
beast, right?
stage all by itself.
It can. And I remember like walking as fast as I could to get to it because I also felt safe on the bench,
Yes.
but it's because I didn't like the spotlight. And I remember somebody saying, what if you walk out? First of all, frame two things. One, that the piano is a friend. And now when I approach it, I'll put my hand on it. Hello, old friend. I'm thinking to
Mhm.
myself, here we are together. Let's do this. And then in greeting the audience, the people there to listen, that we're sharing this thing. And I want to share this thing I love with you. And that engagement and taking in the applauses. Thank you for spending the time listening to what I have to say. I appreciate this. And, sharing that with my students too, that it is in community. It is a healing thing. I think it's one of the most powerful ways. And when people say, of course, things like cutting arts, where it's enrichment, and I get all in a worked up frenzy because I think it's core to our humanity. And if we don't have that, we're lost.
Well, that was just a beautiful conversation. I could talk to you for another hour, but I know your time is very precious. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
for
Andrea. It was
speaking with
great
me
to
today.
connect.
And more beautiful joy making in the world to come.
Thank you so much.
The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.